Every time I come out here, Vinny is working and you're holding his hand. Vinny and I finished what we started yesterday. Get your hands dirty for a change and do some welding and grinding instead of watching everyone else do it. Every bike that needs to be built gets built, and this is the kind of stuff we've been dealing with for 10 years. After building Orange County choppers into a TV empire, Paul Teutul Jr. lost everything in a heartbreaking family war with his father. Demanded $1.5 million from his own son, and his brother had to pick a side. But there was a time when you and your dad kind of split up. I mean, he fired you. At the time it was hard, but looking back it was the best thing. And when Paul became a father himself, he realized the real cost of their famous fight. I found a lot of forgiveness and understanding toward my own father because of having my own son today, said Paul. Reveals the painful truth behind the cameras and explains why he hasn't had a holiday meal with his father in 15 years. In the mid-1980s, most kids were riding bikes, watching cartoons, or playing Nintendo. But Paul Teutul Jr. had a very different idea of what was fun. When other kids were at the beach, he was working at Orange County Iron Works, sweeping metal shavings off the workshop floors and running tools to grown men welding steel. Even before that, he used to go to his dad's job site and he would pick up scrap metal like it was toys and arrange it into little sculptures, making up things out of things other people would consider junk. That early exposure shaped everything. By the time he was 14, Paul was already welding with a calm precision that even the more experienced guys admired. He wasn't just learning skills, he was also learning how to think like a builder. But life in the shop wasn't all sparks and glory. His dad, Paul Sr., had a reputation for being strict, and he didn't treat his son well. Junior couldn't get away with small mistakes. If something went wrong, he'd get yelled at in front of everyone. Some thought it was unfair, but Senior thought it would make him stronger. As the years went on, their personalities clashed more and more. I also think that the show did a lot of damage to the family. Paul Sr. liked brute strength and old-fashioned ways of doing things. Paul Jr. had a more artistic eye and liked clean lines and perfect detail. One summer, Jr. redesigned a railing. At first, his dad didn't like the idea, but a few days later, without saying a word, he agreed and used the design. That moment said it all. There was respect, but there was also a constant tug of war. While most high school students were studying for math tests, Paul Jr. went in a different direction. He joined a vocational program that let him spend half of his school day learning mental work. He learned how to weld, read blueprints, and find stress points in steel. One of his teachers said he had Junior spent hours after school practicing every weld and cut until it felt natural. He knew he didn't need a fancy degree to be successful. He just needed to master his craft. When he went back to his dad's shop after graduation, he wasn't the kid sweeping floors anymore. He was a skilled fabricator who could talk like the pros and get things done. By age 19, Paul Jr. was in charge of the railing division at Orange County Iron Works, which isn't a small job. Most people would think it was because he was family, but Jr. earned it. He added more design options and gave the shop a more modern look. His designs were so popular that people were willing to pay more and wait longer just to get something he made. He also had to manage a group of workers who were much older than him, some of whom were war veterans. At first they were skeptical, but over time even the toughest ones admitted he knew what he was doing. So what are you thinking? He had taken an Indian motive and turned a metal shop into a place where people talked about it. That kind of respect doesn't come easily, but there was still something missing. After years of building stairs and railings, Junior felt trapped. He wanted to build something that moved and breathed. That spark lit when he started drawing motorcycles in secret in an old notebook after long days at work. Around the same time, his dad got back into bikes, and Senior asked Junior to help him build one. But when Paul Sr. was shocked when he saw what his son had drawn. It wasn't just technical, it was art. That day Senior looked at his son and said, "Let's build bikes for real. Not as a hobby, as a business." It wasn't just about motorcycles, it was about fixing something much bigger. After years of being apart, they finally started Orange County Choppers with about $175,000 from the family's Iron Works business. But it wasn't fair. Senior kept 80%, and Junior got 20%. It didn't matter yet. They started out with nothing but a dream and a cold basement full of tools. But within a few months, the bikes they were building started getting noticed. It took them 4 long months of late nights, endless welding, blue paint with white flames, and late nights again to finish their first bike. True blue. When they brought it to Daytona in 1999, everyone was shocked. They were no longer unknowns. But success didn't come easily. In 2000 they were building bikes in a tiny freezing workshop where tools and suppliers were broken. They often worked 18-hour days and slept on a couch in the shop to stay on schedule. They had constant yelling matches, not for show but to stay alive. Every bike they sold barely covered costs, but they kept going because they couldn't stop. Then in 2002, a TV producer named Craig Piligian called. He had seen an article about their bikes in a magazine and was looking for a new reality show when he called. Paul Sr. picked up the phone and yelled, "What the hell do you want?" Sr. quickly turned down the producer's idea for a show about restoring junkyard bikes, saying that the deal was almost over. But a few weeks later the producer came back with a better idea, to film the real process of the arguments and all. Paul Jr. hated the idea because he thought the cameras would ruin everything. He even wrote his dad a 5-page letter saying they'll make us look like fools. The contract was ridiculous, $5,000 per episode, endless camera retakes, and lighting so bright that it messed up their welding. At one point producers suggested calling the show Family Friction. Paul Jr. and his partners almost quit, but they needed the money so they signed. When American Chopper premiered on March 31, 2003, no one expected what would happen next. In just 3 episodes it exploded, and suddenly they weren't just bike builders. They were stars, and their tiny shop turned into a tourist attraction, and merchandise sold like crazy. The first season alone made $13 million for Discovery Channel, and the two Tulls had to move into a huge $12 million building just to keep up. At first people watched because of Paul Sr.'s temper, but Paul Jr.'s designs kept them watching. Fans didn't care about the drama, they loved watching him build. In fact, a scene of him building a gas tank with no music or talking became one of the most requested clips ever shown in welding schools across America. Then came the Black Widow, which wasn't just a bike, it was a statement. It had a spiderweb gas tank, custom wheels, and 167 hours of pure craftsmanship. When it was unveiled in New York, 15,000 people crowded in to see it, and security had to hold the crowd back. Soon they were selling model kits, shirts, video games, and everything else. Over 280,000 model kits were sold in 6 months, making OC a brand, not just a shop. When Paul Jr. finished building the Fire bike in June, in 2003, Paul wasn't just making another chopper, it was a turning point in his career. He wasn't just making a motorcycle, he was building a memorial to the firefighters who died on September 11th, and that meant that every part of the bike had to have meaning. One of the most powerful parts was a real piece of steel from the World Trade Center wreckage that Paul welded on himself. The jagged piece of metal was attached to a diamond plate bracket that he made just for this bike. It was the last piece. The hardest part though, the design was so big that he had to completely redesign the bike's frame. It had to hold 343 hand-painted emblems, one for each firefighter who died. That much weight, both literally and figuratively, required serious engineering. When the bike crashed the next year, the New York Fire Department didn't treat it like any other accident. They came and carefully picked up the damaged bike like it was a fallen comrade. That's how much it meant to them. People still come to see it at over 248 events, get emotional, and leave personal notes and tributes next to it. Years later, Paul Jr. would return to the pain and power of 9/11s with another project, a second tribute bike. It was unveiled on January 20, 2011, and the response was overwhelming. It brought together people like New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg and the president of the 9/11 Memorial. Paul had been asked by Daniel R. Tishman, a board member of the memorial, to build it. He brought not just one bike but 2. One stayed as a memorial, and the other was raffled off to raise money for the memorial. People bought tickets in person and online, and all the money raised went directly to support the 9/11's museum. That day when the bike's cover came off, grown men, families, tourists, and everyone else was moved by what it stood for. The design told a story without saying a word, and the Huffington Post wrote a whole article about it. spreading the message to people who, even though he wasn't there, Paul Jr.'s technical mind was even more impressive than the flashy paint and chrome. In 2012, he quietly introduced a technique that changed the motorcycle world: T-spling, a tool that made it easier to design smooth curved shapes. What used to take over 40 hours now only took 15, and when he built an electric bike with Autodesk, that method was essential. Soon other shops started using the same technique without realizing where it came from. Then in 2015, Paul did something that even his team found surprising. He made a system that made motorcycle frames lighter while still being strong. This completely changed how they built customs, but he didn't stop there. He also taught himself how to write G-code, which is the programming language for CNC machines. Before he was only designing the bikes, but now he could also run the machines. He went from being an artist to a machinist, doing both the creative and technical parts of the build. This caused problems between Paul Teutul Sr. and his son. Didn't happen all at once. It started slowly in 2007, when Sr. gave Jr. a 20% stake in the company, but kept full control. At first it seemed like a fair arrangement. Father runs the business, son brings the style. But as Jr.'s designs became more popular and made headlines, the balance started to tip. People stopped praising Sr.'s old-school craftsmanship and started talking about Jr.'s crazy ideas, which didn't sit well with the man who built Orange County choppers from the ground up. Behind the scenes, Sr.'s jealousy grew. Every time Jr. came in late or did his own thing, it lit a fuse that got harder to put out. By 2008, the shop had turned into a war zone, where fights between father and son were common. Most of the fights were over control. Jr. wanted freedom to create, while Sr. wanted obedience. It was a clash of creative spirit versus strict discipline. The cameras on American Chopper caught some of it, but they didn't show the whole thing. When the lights went out, Sr. became meaner, and not just to Jr. One of Sr.'s rants made everyone in the shop walk on eggshells. Even Mikey, Sr.'s goofy peacekeeping younger brother, couldn't escape the emotional wreckage. He looked like years of being yelled at had finally caught up with him. Then there was the fight in September 2008. Jr. was late again, and Sr. snapped. What should have been a warning turned into a screaming match in front of everyone. I want to be with my dad, but getting out of that unhealthy relationship helped me grow spiritually, emotionally, and on every other level because I got away from my dad and became my own person. When Jr. tried to defend himself by saying he always got the job done, Sr. wouldn't listen. Jr. fired back, saying that OC would fall apart without him. That's when Sr. lost it, and Jr., furious beyond reason, threw a chair across the office, then a trash can, kicked down a door, and stormed out. Sr. chased him down and fired him right away. That chair-throwing incident not only broke furniture, it also destroyed what little work relationship they had left. Years later, the incident would become a meme, but at the time, it was a disaster. After the firing, there was chaos. Some on the crew supported Jr., while others stayed quiet out of fear of Sr.'s anger. Customers began to wonder if their bikes would still have the same magic now that the designer behind them was gone. And even the network panicked and sent Jr. a warning, saying he had broken. For a short time, he came back as a contractor, but it didn't last. By April 2009, he was done for good. Sr. took it even further. He wanted Jr. out of the business completely and moved to buy Jr.'s 20% stake when Jr. wouldn't sell. When Jr. wouldn't sell, Sr. filed a lawsuit. The legal mess wasn't just about money, it was about power. Sr. wanted full control back and said he had the right to buy out Jr.'s shares for $500,000. He then added a lawsuit, demanding an extra $1 million in damages. Sr. even made his own company a co-defendant and put Orange County helicopters on both sides of the case, which was a sneaky move meant to get Jr. to quit, but Jr. wouldn't give up. The main issue was a poorly written contract clause that said Sr. could buy Jr.'s shares at fair market value, but it didn't explain how to figure out what that meant. This vague language would prove to be a bomb in court when the case went to the New York Supreme Court in 2010. The first ruling favored Sr. because the judge said the buyout clause was legal and ordered an outside appraiser to set the value of the shares. It looked like Jr. was out,
as he sat in court with Senior without even looking at him. But Junior filed an appeal, and in December, everything changed. The appellate court overturned the ruling, saying that the clause was too vague to be enforced. This meant that Junior kept his 20% stake in OC and Senior couldn't fire him. It was a huge legal win, and a personal victory as well, because the son everyone thought was dead was still standing, and his father couldn't get rid of him. My relationship with my dad is one in which we're not fighting, but we're also not really hanging out either. Things aren't bad, but they could be better, but that's okay. You know that these things take time. Still, Junior couldn't build bikes right away, because he had a 1-year non-compete clause that said he couldn't build motorcycles until 2010, so he changed careers and started doing product design. With a dog park and a new look for Coleman's Camping Grill, he told them it was one of the hardest times of his life, but he kept going. He and his wife turned a room in their house into an office, hired a young man to do computer work, and opened Paul Jr. Designs across the street from OC in April 2010, just as Paul Jr. S 1-year non-compete clause with Orange County Choppers ended. He did something that no one saw coming. Instead of opening his own bike shop, he led a full-scale revolt among the people who had been supporting OCU, like Vinny DeMartino and Joe Pulifico. Even Paul Sr.'s own brother Mikey quit the company and joined him, and it wasn't long before Cody Connolly did too. This wasn't just a business shift, it was a mass defection that left Paul Sr. devastated and angry. Discovery Channel quickly turned the fallout into reality TV gold by starting a new show called Senior vs. Junior, which pitted father against son in a weekly showdown that blurred the line between family and ratings. The tension between Paul Sr. and Junior wasn't new, but it was official when this show aired in August 2010, and every episode fueled the fire. Paul Jr. had doubts about putting their family drama on national TV, but Paul Sr. leaned into it. The shop fights were meant to be dramatic, and viewers were encouraged to take sides. One reviewer called it tantrum TV, and they weren't wrong. The bikes took a back seat to the emotional wreckage. This wasn't just entertainment anymore. It was real pain packaged for the public to watch. While lawsuits were flying, and the Teutul name was being pulled in every direction, something unexpected happened. Paul Jr. met Rachel Beast during an episode shoot. She showed up wearing a yellow jumpsuit as the McCuff girl, and they hit it off right away. What started on a TV set turned into something serious. Rachel gave Paul Jr. something solid. She owned her own boutique and had her own career, and she soon became the calm in his storm. Through her, Paul found balance and eventually a deeper sense of faith that their wedding in August 2010 should have been a fresh start. It was beautiful, grand, and even had a 6-tier cake from TLC's Cake Boss. But there was one empty chair that everyone noticed. Paul Sr. didn't show up. He was invited, but the lawsuits and bad feelings were still too fresh. The fact that his father wasn't there on one of the most important days of his life hit him hard, even though there were over 100 guests. It felt like someone was missing, and it wasn't just personal. It showed how deeply they had grown apart. Years went by, but the wounds didn't heal quickly. Then in 2015, Paul Jr. became a father himself. He and Rachel had been trying to get pregnant for almost 2 years in New York, and finally they did. Hudson was born during a short trip to Nashville, which was an odd coincidence. Paul Jr. said that seeing his own father hold his son made him realize what had been lost in all those years of silence and courtrooms. To understand what it meant to be a father, and how painful it must have been for his own dad to see him walk away, Paul Jr. went through a quiet change. He started to think more deeply about things, especially his faith. In an interview, he said he wasn't proud of how he had been living, not even with Rachel. But after a powerful spiritual retreat, they made the brave decision that they wouldn't be intimate until they got married. It wasn't easy, but it meant something to them. Eventually, he asked her to marry him, and their faith became a guiding force in Paul Jr.'s life. He even started talking about it in public, sharing his journey, and helping others find their own way through hardship. Over time, his faith gave him the courage to look back and reach out to the man he used to be unable to speak to, not just for himself but also for Hudson, because every time he looked at his son he saw what it cost to remain silent. That's when the healing really began. What began as a family business turned into one of the craziest rivalries reality TV had ever seen, with millions of viewers tuning in to see not only custom motorcycles being built, but also a father and son tearing each other apart with every wrench turned. Their biggest showdown came in 2011, when both men competed in a televised build-off that showed how different they had become. Senior went with his usual raw style, while Junior went with his more polished one. Junior built a bike that was based on the P-51 Mustang fighter plane. It was sleek, creative, and full of soul, and it didn't just run, it told a story. It was clear that Junior wasn't just building machines, he was making statements. From 2010 to 2016, they competed against each other many times, but Paul Jr. won 5 of them, showing that he wasn't just a kid working under his dad, he was a force of his own. Junior didn't just leave Orange County Choppers in 2009. He didn't just. Most people thought he'd go out of business after a year of not being able to work for anyone else. Instead, he teamed up with Coleman to design a grill which saved his business during a tough economy. That deal led to more, and he started selling products, designing dog toys, and even building a public dog park. By 2012, his brand was doing better than his dad's. His clothing line was making more money, and his bikes were being used in huge corporate campaigns. He was working with global giants like Blizzard and Paramount. He wasn't just designing motorcycles for famous people anymore. He was designing for them and making a lot of money. But even the coldest feuds can break down. When Helen Teutul, Paul Jr. was grandmother, and Paul Sr.'s mother died in December 2011. It was one of the most honest moments the show had ever shown. Junior called his dad for the first time in almost 2 years. They only said a few simple words, "I love you and I'm sorry." "I'm sorry for your loss," Senior said, but you could hear something change in his voice behind the anger. There was grief and maybe even regret. That moment didn't fix everything, but it was something real. The 2018 reunion between Paul Teutul Sr. and Paul Jr. wasn't an emotional family breakthrough. It was a business move carefully planned and pushed by TV producers, hoping to cash in on old drama that the two hadn't said a word to each other about. It had been almost 10 years since their big fight in 2009, which ended with Senior firing his son from Orange County Choppers. There was a lot of silence, so when Discovery Channel suggested they get back together, it wasn't to heal, it was to fix a broken motorcycle, not a broken family. They chose the Yankees-themed chopper they built back in 2005. It had been sold and then mysteriously destroyed. Some even said it might have been damaged for insurance reasons. That wreck gave the network the perfect reason to call them back. Behind the scenes, they were tense because they had different shooting schedules, strict rules, and even backup plans in case things got out of hand. Senior tried to keep their cool by saying they were a little older and a little wiser, but everyone knew this wasn't going to be a friendly reunion. 2 years later, the last ride, a 2-hour special that was supposed to end everything, made things worse. It all started with good intentions. ABC Supply commissioned a patriotic bike to represent family and respect. But from the first day, there were brief, powerful moments when Senior brushed off his son's ideas just like in the old days. Crew members could feel the tension, and the original OC shop was being torn down in the background. Junior later said that the only times he felt good were when he and his dad worked side by side quietly, without cameras in their faces, just building like they did in the old days. But those moments were rare. When the bike was finished, Senior admitted he hadn't wanted to do it. It didn't help. Fans were furious, and hashtags like Respect Paul Jr. went viral as people called out Senior's cold attitude. Despite what the commercials say, they're not even slightly close now. They live separate lives and only talk when they have to for production reasons. From 2018 to 2023, they worked on a few bikes together, but people close to the show say it was all for the cameras. Junior recently confirmed in a podcast that he and his, even after the birth of their son, the dads haven't shared a holiday meal together in over 15 years. Their businesses are also split. Senior still runs Orange County Choppers, and Junior turned Paul Jr. Designs into a $14 million brand with clothing and licensing deals. Both men seem to agree that working together hurt their relationship, and neither is willing to go back to that. These days they live in the same spotlight but not the same world. And now Junior is ready to talk in February 2025. He announced a new book called The Opportunity, which comes out in October. Won't be a polished TV story. Instead, insiders say it will be raw and brutally honest. It's expected to show a lot of things that weren't shown on American Chopper, like a fight in 2008 that almost got physical. While his first book was about his career and faith, this one is about his father's struggles with alcoholism and the long-lasting damage it did to their family. Junior said he's no longer hiding the truth. He believes sharing it could help people who have been through similar family problems.